The silence broke at exactly 14:47 Galactic Standard Time. Ambassador Tilra had been reviewing resource reports when every screen in her observation chamber went red. The peaceful hum of Meridian VII's orbital station turned into chaos as alarms screamed through the corridors. Her three-fingered hands trembled as she pulled up the incoming transmissions. 7 distress signals, all broadcasting simultaneously from different coalition worlds. "This cannot be real," whispered her assistant Pyrrha, whose violet skin had gone pale. The young technician frantically worked the controls, trying to filter out what she assumed was some kind of system malfunction. But the signals kept coming, each one more desperate than the last. Tilra expanded the holographic display. Her breath caught in her throat. The messages showed massive crystalline structures appearing in orbit around peaceful worlds. Ships unlike anything in Coalition records, their surfaces reflecting starlight like shattered glass. They moved with purpose, descending on planets like locusts on a harvest. The first world to fall silent was Garden Prime. 3 billion souls lived there, farming the gentle valleys and floating cities. The transmission cut off mid-sentence, the station commander's final words forever lost to static. Within an hour, 5 more worlds went dark. Tilra called an emergency session of the Coalition High Council. Representatives from 47 species materialized as holograms around the circular chamber. Some appeared confused, others already knew. Their homeworlds were burning. "We must attempt communication," insisted Council Leader Vorn, his tentacles writhing with anxiety. "All conflicts can be resolved through dialogue. This is the foundation of our civilization." Tilra wanted to believe him. The Coalition had existed for 12,000 years without a single war. They had no soldiers, no weapons beyond the ceremonial displays used in festivals. Peace wasn't just their way of life. It was the only life they knew. But the crystalline ships didn't respond to any hails. Radio, laser, quantum entanglement, even the old chemical signals. Nothing. The invaders simply continued their work, deploying smaller craft that descended to planetary surfaces. Reports described them stripping entire continents of minerals, water, and organic matter. The planets themselves were being consumed. By the second day, 12 worlds had fallen silent, 40 billion lives gone. Tilra stopped sleeping. She coordinated refugee evacuations, rerouted supply ships, and sent what few defensive craft the Coalition possessed to try slowing the advance. It was like throwing pebbles at a mountain. The crystalline ships, which the survivors had started calling the consuming swarm, barely noticed. On the third day, young Pyrrha discovered something in the restricted archives. Files sealed so long ago that most council members didn't know they existed. Records left by the precursors, the mysterious civilization that had vanished millennia before the Coalition formed. "Ambassador, you need to see this," Pyrrha said, her voice shaking. She displayed the ancient data on a private screen. The files described a quarantine zone, a region of space marked with warnings in every language the precursors knew. They called it the Death System. The records spoke of a world so hostile that evolution itself had become warfare, crushing gravity, unstable weather patterns, tectonic chaos. Predators evolved to hunt other predators. And somehow, intelligence had emerged from that nightmare. The precursors had made contact once, only once. What they found terrified them so badly they sealed the entire system and forbade anyone from ever approaching it again. The species called themselves humans. They came from a planet named Earth. The records were fragmentary, damaged by time, but certain phrases remained clear, adapted for constant conflict. Psychological resilience beyond measurement, capable of extreme violence, highly aggressive pack hunters. The precursors had run, they never returned. "This is madness," Tilra said, reading through the files a second time. "We cannot contact a species that frightened the precursors themselves." "We're dying," Pyrrha replied simply. 15 worlds are gone now. The swarm is accelerating. At this rate, we have maybe 2 weeks before they reach Harmony Prime. Our entire civilization will cease to exist. Tilra looked at the young technician. Pyrrha had lost her family when Garden Prime fell. Her parents, her siblings, her entire community erased in minutes. The violet-skinned girl was the only survivor from her city. The ambassador accessed the ancient coordinates buried in the precursor files. The death system, Earth, a world that had been isolated for thousands of years, possibly longer, a species that might not even exist anymore, or worse, might be exactly as dangerous as the warnings suggested. But what choice did they have? "Prepare a transmission," Tilra ordered. "Use every frequency we have. Make it simple. Make it desperate. If anyone is listening, they need to understand we're facing extinction." Pyrrha worked quickly. She compiled footage of the swarm attacks, population counts, star charts showing the invasion's progress. Everything compressed into a single message that could be understood even without shared language. Images carried meaning where words failed. Tilra recorded her voice, knowing it might be the last thing she ever did. "To anyone in the death system, we are the Harmonious Coalition. We have lived in peace for 12,000 years. Now we are dying. A force we cannot understand is destroying our worlds. We have no weapons, no soldiers, no way to fight back. If you can hear this message, if you possess the capability, please help us. We are not warriors. We do not know how to save ourselves." She paused, then added one final line. "We are afraid." The message transmitted into the void, aimed at coordinates that might lead nowhere. The death system lay 3 weeks away at maximum coalition warp speed. Even if someone received the signal, even if they chose to respond, it would take time. Time they didn't have. That night, Tilra sat alone in her observation chamber, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, the swarm continued its relentless advance. Somewhere out there, perhaps, beings who knew how to fight might hear her plea. 18 worlds had fallen silent by morning. The message traveled through the darkness of space, carrying the desperate hope of a dying civilization toward a quarantined system that the ancient precursors had feared to approach. Toward Earth, toward humanity, toward the Deathworlders. The signal reached Luna Station 3 weeks after Tilra sent it into the void. Admiral Rebecca Cross was reviewing supply manifests when her assistant interrupted the morning briefing. Lieutenant David Kim looked like he hadn't slept in days, his eyes wide with something between excitement and fear. "Admiral, you need to hear this, now." Cross dismissed the logistics officers and followed Kim to the communications center. The room hummed with activity as technicians worked to clean up the transmission. What played through the speakers made her forget about supply chains entirely. Tilra's voice carried across the light years, translated by the station's linguistic algorithms. The desperation was clear in every syllable. The attached footage showed destruction on a scale Cross had never witnessed. Entire planets stripped bare, populations vanishing, civilizations crumbling. "How long ago was this sent?" Cross asked. 3 weeks. The signal traveled through standard space, not quantum channels. Whoever sent it doesn't have access to faster communication methods. 3 weeks. That meant the situation was already worse than the message described. Cross felt her stomach tighten. Humanity had spent 200 years searching for other intelligent life. They'd built radio telescopes, launched probes, scanned every frequency imaginable. The silence of the universe had become a weight on the collective human soul. Now someone was calling for help. "Get me the Defense Council, all of them. I don't care what time zone they're in." Within 2 hours, the council convened via secure holographic link. Representatives from 6 continents materialized around the conference table. General Liu Wei from Beijing, Dr. Amara Okonkwo from Lagos, Minister Pierre Dubois from Paris, Secretary Maria Santos from Sao Paulo, Director Yuki Tanaka from Tokyo. Ambassador James Foster from New York. Cross played the message. The silence that followed was profound. It could be a trap, Liu Wei said finally. We know nothing about these species, nothing about their intentions. This could be designed to lure our fleet into an ambush. An ambush from whom? Dr. Okonkwo countered. We've detected no alien presence in our region of space. If someone wanted to attack Earth, they could have done so at any point in the last 2 centuries. The message mentions they're not warriors, Santos observed. That their civilization has existed in peace for thousands of years. If true, this represents first contact with a genuinely peaceful alliance. Foster leaned forward. The real question is whether we're prepared for this. First contact protocols assume we'd have time to negotiate, establish communication, learn about each other. This is a crisis situation. We'd be jumping into a war we don't understand. Then we gather intelligence first, Cross suggested. Send a scout fleet, fast ships that can observe and report back before committing our full forces. Tanaka shook her head. With respect, Admiral, we don't have time for reconnaissance. The message is 3 weeks old. If the invasion is progressing as shown in the footage, waiting another month could mean there's nothing left to save. We've been building a defense fleet for decades, Liu Wei said slowly. Training crews, developing weapons, preparing for threats we weren't even sure existed. Now we have a purpose for all that preparation. Dr. Okonkwo pulled up additional analysis on her display. Our xenobiology team studied the footage. The coalition species appear to come from what we'd classify as garden worlds. Low gravity, stable climates, minimal tectonic activity. Their evolutionary pressures were gentle compared to Earth. Meaning what? Santos asked. Meaning they're fragile. What we consider normal environmental conditions would be hostile to them. Earth's gravity alone would likely crush most of these species. They evolved in paradise. We evolved in hell. The truth of that statement settled over the council. Earth was classified as a death world by every metric. High gravity forged stronger bones and muscles. Unpredictable weather created adaptability. Aggressive predators developed intelligence and cooperation. Humanity didn't just survive Earth. They thrived in conditions that would kill most theoretical alien species. If we respond, Cross said carefully, we need to understand what we're committing to. This isn't a peacekeeping mission. The footage shows aggressive, organized destruction. We'd be entering a shooting war. Our ships are ready, Tanaka said. She commanded the Orbital Defense Fleet, the collection of warships that circled Earth and patrolled the outer system. We have 80 combat-ready vessels. Carriers, destroyers, frigates, support craft. We've been drilling for combat scenarios since before I was born. Personnel, Cross asked. 30,000 trained military. Another 50,000 in reserves we could mobilize within 72 hours. Foster raised a hand. Before we commit to this, we need to address the moral question. These aliens are strangers. We owe them nothing. Do we really want to risk human lives for beings we've never met? The question hung in the air. It was Dr. Okonkwo who answered. 200 years ago, we sent messages into space hoping someone would answer. We built monuments to the dream of first contact. We taught our children that humanity was reaching for the stars. Now the stars are reaching back and they're asking for help. What kind of species would we be if we turned away? The kind that survives, Foster replied quietly. No, Cross said, her voice firm. The kind that survives alone, forever wondering what we could have been if we'd had the courage to answer. She looked at each council member in turn. I've spent my career preparing for the possibility of hostile contact, training for invasions, attacks, extinction-level threats, but I never stopped hoping we'd find friends out there instead of enemies. This is that chance, maybe the only one we'll ever get. Liu Wei nodded slowly. We put it to a vote, all in favor of mobilizing a response fleet. 6 hands rose, Only Foster abstained. "Motion carries," Cross said. "Commander Tanaka, begin fleet mobilization. I want every combat-ready ship prepared for immediate deployment. Call back our deep space patrols. Activate reserve crews. We launch in 48 hours." "Destination?" Tanaka asked. Cross pulled up the star charts from Tilra's message. The coordinates pointed to a cluster of systems approximately 60 light-years from Earth. At maximum warp, they could reach it in 5 days. "We're going to war," Cross said simply, "and we're going to show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do." The council adjourned. Within hours, Earth's orbital shipyards exploded with activity. Crews rushed to ships that had been maintained but never truly tested in combat. Weapons systems activated. Supply lines reorganized. Messages went out across the solar system, calling humanity's defenders home. In his small apartment in Tokyo, Commander Tanaka's son watched the news reports with wide eyes. He was 7 years old, too young to understand war but old enough to feel his mother's determination. "Are the aliens bad?" he asked. Tanaka knelt beside him. "Some of them are, but some of them are good and need our help. That's what heroes do. They help people who can't help themselves." 48 hours later, 83 ships of the human expeditionary fleet gathered at the Luna staging point. Admiral Cross broadcast from the bridge of her flagship, the carrier Indomitable. "Today we answer the call that humanity has waited 2 centuries to receive. We go not as conquerors but as defenders. The galaxy is bigger than we ever imagined, and somewhere out there people are dying. We're going to stop that. All ships, prepare for warp jump." The fleet vanished into faster-than-light space, racing toward a war that would define humanity's place among the stars. 5 days of warp travel gave the fleet time to prepare, but nothing could prepare them for what they found. The Indomitable dropped out of faster-than-light space at the edge of the Meridian system, and immediately every sensor screamed warnings. Commander Yuki Tanaka stood in the tactical center, watching the holographic display populate with targets. Too many targets. "Tactical analysis," Admiral Cross ordered from her command chair. Lieutenant Sarah Morrison worked her console rapidly. "I'm reading 6 large structures in orbit around Meridian VII, each one approximately 4 kilometers long, crystalline composition. Hundreds of smaller craft moving between the structures and the planet's surface. Energy signatures suggest active resource extraction. Life signs. On the planet, minimal. The orbital station is badly damaged but still transmitting. I'm picking up approximately 200 life forms aboard, down from a typical crew complement of over 3,000. Cross felt her jaw tighten. The Coalition station was dying. They'd arrived just in time to watch it fall. "Communications, try to raise that station. All frequencies." "Aye, Admiral." The tactical display updated as more data streamed in. The crystalline ships, the consuming swarm, had methodically stripped 3 of Meridian VII's 5 continents down to bedrock. The planet that had once been a garden was becoming a desert of exposed stone and empty oceans. "Admiral, we're receiving a response from the station. Audio only. It's badly degraded." "Put it through." The voice that came through was weak, distorted by static and damage, but the desperation was unmistakable. Tilra was still alive, still trying to save her people. "Unknown vessels, this is Ambassador Tilra of the Harmonious Coalition. If you are more invaders, please know we have nothing left to take. If you are something else, anything else, please respond." Cross gestured to communications. "Open a channel, let me talk to her." "Channel open, Admiral." "Ambassador Tilra, this is Admiral Rebecca Cross of the United Earth Fleet. Your distress call reached us. We're here to help." The silence that followed lasted several heartbeats. When Tilra's voice returned, it was shaking. "Earth, the death system, you actually exist." "We do, and we brought friends. How many are aboard your station?" 187. We've lost life support in 6 sections. Main power is failing. We have perhaps 4 hours before total collapse. Understood. Stand by for rescue operations. Cross-cut the channel and turn to Tanaka. Commander, I want rescue shuttles ready to evacuate that station. But first, we need to clear the area. Those swarm ships are between us and the survivors. Tanaka studied the tactical display. The swarm had noticed the human fleet. Approximately 200 of their smaller craft were moving to intercept, leaving the main harvesters to continue their work. It was efficient, calculated, and completely emotionless. They're treating us like an obstacle, Tanaka observed, not a threat. Let's change their assessment. All ships, battle formation Delta, weapons systems to active status. The human fleet spread out, each ship taking position in a three-dimensional sphere that maximized firing angles and minimized vulnerability. It was a formation they drilled 1,000 times in simulations. Now it was real. The swarm attack craft approached at steady acceleration. They didn't weave or dodge, simply came forward in neat geometric patterns. Their weapons, designed for mining operations, began firing plasma cutters at extreme range. Point defense systems engage, Cross ordered. The human ships responded instantly. Laser arrays tracked incoming fire, intercepting the plasma before it could reach the fleet. Not every shot was stopped, but enough were that the shields absorbed the rest without significant damage. They're still coming, Morrison reported. No change in tactics. They don't know what we are yet, Cross said. They think we're like the Coalition. Fragile, passive. Let's educate them. All ships return fire, show them what kinetic weapons can do. The human fleet opened up. Railguns accelerated metal slugs to significant fractions of light speed. Simple physics turned chunks of iron into devastating projectiles. The swarm craft, designed for mining in stable conditions, had shields optimized for debris and heat. They weren't prepared for solid objects moving at relativistic velocities. The first volley tore through 20 swarm craft. They simply disintegrated, crystalline structures shattering into fragments. The swarm formation wavered. For the first time, they changed tactics, beginning evasive maneuvers. But their movements were predictable, mathematical. The human targeting computers adapted in real time, predicting positions and firing where the swarm ships would be rather than where they were. Missile batteries fire, Tanaka commanded. Hundreds of missiles launched from the fleet, each one guided by its own AI. Unlike the swarm's predictable movements, human weapons incorporated randomized flight patterns. They jittered and weaved, making themselves difficult targets while closing the distance. The swarm tried to intercept them. They destroyed perhaps 40% of the incoming missiles. The rest found their marks. Explosions blossomed across the tactical display. In 8 minutes of engagement, the immediate swarm presence around the Coalition station had been reduced by 70%. The survivors began retreating toward their main harvesters. Cease fire, Cross ordered. Get those rescue shuttles moving. We have maybe 30 minutes before they reorganize. Commander Tanaka personally led the rescue operation. Her shuttle approached the damaged Coalition station carefully, matching the slow tumble caused by partial stabilizer failure. Up close, the damage was horrific. Entire sections had been sheared away by swarm weapons. Atmosphere vented from dozens of breaches. The docking procedures took precious minutes. When the airlock finally opened, Tanaka got her first look at an alien species. Tilra stood barely 1.5 meters tall. Her skin was a pale blue-gray, her eyes large and dark. She moved with obvious difficulty in the station's artificial gravity, which had been set to what humans considered minimal. 2 other Coalition members flanked her, different species with wildly different biologies but the same expression of exhausted hope. Ambassador Tilra, Tanaka asked. Commander Tanaka, thank you for coming. Thank you for existing. The translator rendered Tilra's words with surprising accuracy, though it couldn't quite capture the emotional weight. We need to move fast. Can your people reach the shuttle bays? Most can, some are too injured, some are trapped in sealed sections. My Marines will handle the trapped ones. You focus on getting the mobile survivors to safety. Over the next 20 minutes, 187 coalition members were evacuated. The human Marines moved through the damaged station with efficiency, cutting through collapsed corridors and carrying injured aliens with surprising gentleness. These were beings adapted for low gravity and minimal physical stress. The Marines treated them like they might treat children, with care and constant awareness of their fragility. The last shuttle departed just as the swarm began another approach. Tanaka watched from her cockpit as the coalition station finally lost power completely, going dark against the stars. It had stood for 600 years. Now it was a tomb. Back aboard the Indomitable, the coalition survivors were taken to medical bays that had been hastily modified. The ship's doctors lowered gravity, adjusted atmospheric composition, and worked to treat injuries they'd never seen before. Tilra was brought to meet Admiral Cross in person. The ambassador entered the briefing room and immediately stumbled. Earth's standard gravity, even reduced to half normal, was crushing to her. Cross quickly gestured, and the room's localized gravity reduced further. Tilra gasped with relief. "I apologize," Cross said. "We're not used to hosting visitors. Earth's gravity is higher than most species can handle." Tilra studied the human woman, tall by coalition standards, heavily muscled, moving with a predator's controlled grace. Everything about Cross spoke of power and danger, yet her eyes showed genuine concern. "You came," Tilra said simply. "The death system actually answered. We're here, and we're not leaving until this is finished." Through the observation port, they could see the swarm harvesters continuing their work, stripping another continent. Cross's expression hardened. "Tell me everything you know about them. How they communicate, how they move, what they want. Because I'm going to destroy every one of those ships, and I need to know how." For the first time in weeks, Tilra allowed herself to hope. Over the next 72 hours, the human fleet jumped between 5 different coalition systems, and each battle revealed more about why humans were so effective at warfare. At Sanctuary III, the swarm had established a harvesting operation in orbit around a gas giant's moon. Commander Tanaka led a boarding action against one of their crystalline ships. The assault shuttles burned hard across open space, while point defense systems cleared a path through defensive fire. 30 seconds to contact, the pilot announced. Hull breach in 3, 2, 1. The shaped charges blew through the swarm ship's outer hull, and Tanaka's Marines poured through the gap. Zero-gravity combat was something humans had trained for extensively. The coalition species, adapted to stable worlds with consistent gravity, had never needed such skills. The swarm defenders were biomechanical constructs, something between living creatures and machines. They responded to the intrusion with methodical efficiency, sealing corridors and attempting to vent atmosphere. What they didn't expect was humans who could operate in vacuum for extended periods, whose suits were designed for the hostile environment of space itself. Sergeant Bobby Wilson led his squad through a series of narrow corridors, using the three-dimensional nature of zero-G to approach from unexpected angles. They'd trained in similar environments in Earth's orbital facilities, where gravity was optional and thinking in multiple dimensions was required. "Contact Section 7, Wilson reported. His squad encountered a cluster of swarm units defending what appeared to be a control nexus. The ensuing firefight was brief and brutal. Human weapons, designed for efficiency rather than elegance, tore through crystalline structures with devastating effect. Within 40 minutes, the harvester was under human control. Dr. Nina Volkov arrived with her xenobiology team, eager to study the captured vessel. What she discovered changed everything. They're not individual beings, Volkov explained to Admiral Cross via comlink. The swarm operates as a true hive mind. Each unit is essentially a specialized cell in a larger organism. They communicate through electromagnetic resonance at very specific frequencies. That's why they never responded to coalition hails, Cross realized. Different communication method entirely. Exactly. The coalition uses radio, laser, even chemical signals, but the swarm's communication is essentially biological electricity. They don't understand the concept of individual thought or negotiation. To them, the coalition worlds are just resources to be processed. Can we disrupt their communication? Possibly. I need more time to study the frequency patterns. But Admiral, there's something else you need to know. The swarm learns. Each engagement, they adapt their tactics slightly. They're processing our combat patterns and adjusting. Cross considered this information. It explained why the swarm had changed formations during their second encounter. They were treating combat like a problem to solve, applying logic and analysis to overcome obstacles. But humans didn't just adapt, they innovated. At Haven Station, the human fleet demonstrated this principle. The swarm approached using the tactics they'd learned from previous battles, maintaining greater dispersion and attempting to overwhelm human point defenses with volume of fire. Captain Rachel Foster commanded the destroyer Swift Justice. She watched the swarm formation approach and smiled coldly. They think they understand us now. Let's show them they're wrong. Helm, execute pattern Foster 7. The human ships suddenly broke formation, each one accelerating in a different direction at forces that would kill most known species. 6G burns that compressed human bodies against crash couches, straining even their enhanced physiology. But humans had evolved as endurance runners, and their bodies could handle punishment that would liquefy coalition species. The swarm formation, optimized for their previous encounters, suddenly found itself attacking empty space while human ships flanked them from multiple vectors. The battle became a demonstration of three-dimensional tactics and aggressive maneuvering. "This is insane," Tilra whispered, watching from the Indomitable's observation deck. She was strapped into a specially designed couch that distributed the forces, but even at reduced acceleration, she felt like she was being crushed. How do they survive these forces? High-gravity evolution, Dr. Amara Okonkwo explained. She'd come aboard to study the coalition species and help with medical procedures. Earth's gravity is roughly twice what most coalition worlds experience. Human bones are denser, muscles stronger, cardiovascular systems more robust. What feels lethal to you is merely uncomfortable to them. The battle lasted 3 hours. The swarm lost 60 ships. The human fleet suffered damage to 8 vessels but no total losses. Afterward, coalition technicians were allowed to tour human ships. A young engineer named Pira, the same one who'd found Earth's coordinates in the ancient files, explored the Swift Justice with wide eyes. Bobby Wilson, now assigned as a liaison officer, showed her around. "This is our main railgun battery. We accelerate a 20-kilogram slug to about 3% of light speed. The kinetic energy does the rest." "But this is so primitive," Pira said, not meaning any offense. "No exotic particles, no zero-point energy manipulation, no quantum entanglement weapons, just mass and velocity." Bobby grinned. "If it works, it works. Coalition technology is elegant and efficient. Human technology is brutal and effective. Different evolutionary pressures create different solutions." He showed her the crew quarters, the training facilities, the combat simulation rooms. Pira noticed that everything was built for punishment. Reinforced structures, redundant systems, manual backup controls. Ships designed assuming things would break and crew would need to improvise. "Your people are fascinating," Pira said. "You plan for failure. We plan for survival. Earth taught us that elegance gets you killed, reliability keeps you alive. Meanwhile, Admiral Cross was having a similar conversation with Tilra. They sat in Cross's ready room, gravity reduced to coalition comfort levels, reviewing tactical data. "I've been studying your combat doctrine," Tilra said. "It's unlike anything in coalition records. You rotate crews during extended operations, fighting in shifts while maintaining constant pressure. Standard practice. Humans are persistence hunters. We're not the fastest or strongest predators, but we can maintain effort longer than anything else. We literally ran prey to death on Earth, chasing them for days until they collapsed from exhaustion." Tilra looked horrified and awed simultaneously. "On our worlds, rest is sacred. Extended exertion damages our physiology, but you've built an entire military strategy around endurance. Every species fights with the advantages evolution gave them. We can't match coalition technology or understanding of theoretical physics, but we can outwork, outlast, and outstubborn just about anything." A priority alert interrupted their conversation. Lieutenant Morrison's voice came through the comm. "Admiral, we're receiving long-range sensor data. The swarm's main fleet is converging. 300 ships heading for Harmony Prime." Cross and Tilra exchanged glances. Harmony Prime was the coalition capital. 12 billion civilians lived on that world and its orbital habitats. "How long until they arrive?" 4 days at their current speed." Cross stood, adjusting to the room's low gravity with practiced ease. "Signal the fleet. We're going to Harmony Prime. Commander Tanaka, I want combat readiness at maximum. Dr. Volkov, I need whatever you can give me on disrupting swarm communications." She turned to Tilra. "Can your government evacuate the civilian population?" "Not in 4 days. We don't have enough ships, and most of our people panic in high-stress situations. The evacuation itself might kill thousands." "Then we stand and fight. 300 to 83. I've faced worse odds." "When?" Tilra asked. Cross smiled grimly. "I lied. I've never faced worse odds, but humans have a saying, there's a first time for everything." The fleet jumped to Harmony Prime, racing against time to reach the coalition capital before the swarm could destroy the last, best hope for peace in the galaxy. Behind them, they left freed worlds and grateful survivors. Ahead of them lay the largest battle humanity had ever fought. And somewhere in the physics labs aboard the Indomitable, Dr. Volkov thought she'd found a way to turn the swarm's greatest strength into their fatal weakness. She just needed time to prove it. Time they probably didn't have. Harmony Prime hung in space like a jewel, its 3 moons creating a delicate dance of light and shadow across the planetary surface. 12 billion coalition citizens went about their lives, most still unaware that death was coming. The human fleet arrived 36 hours before the swarm. Admiral Cross used every minute. The ships deployed minefields in predicted approach vectors, established sensor networks across the outer system, and positioned automated defense platforms at strategic points. It was a masterclass in defensive preparation, something the Coalition had never needed to learn. Tilra broadcast across all Coalition channels, asking the member species to trust these strange Deathworlders who had come from beyond the quarantine zone. The response was mixed. Some species were grateful. Others were terrified, convinced the humans were simply another threat. "They're afraid of us," Commander Tanaka observed, watching the civilian comm traffic. "Half these messages are people begging their government to make us leave." "Can you blame them?" Captain Foster replied. She'd come aboard the Indomitable for the tactical briefing. "We're everything their evolution taught them to fear. Predatory movement, aggressive behavior, comfortable with violence. We're nightmares made real." "But we're their nightmares," Bobby Wilson added. He'd been integrated into the command staff as cultural liaison, his experience with coalition species making him valuable. We're the monsters they need right now." Admiral Cross entered the briefing room and everyone straightened. She looked exhausted, having slept perhaps 6 hours in the last 3 days, but her eyes were sharp, focused. "Dr. Volkov, tell me you have something." The xenobiologist pulled up a holographic display of the swarm's communication network. "I do. The swarm coordinates through a primary command vessel. It broadcasts on a very specific electromagnetic frequency that synchronizes the entire fleet. If we disrupt that frequency with a targeted EMP burst, the individual ships will lose tactical cohesion." "They'll still fight," Tanaka pointed out. "Yes, but independently. No coordination, no shared tactical analysis. Each ship becomes its own unit, making decisions in isolation. Their efficiency drops by an estimated 70%. "What's the catch?" Cross asked. "The EMP device needs to detonate within 500 meters of the command ship. That's point-blank range in naval combat. Whatever delivers, it probably isn't coming back." Silence fell over the briefing room. A suicide mission, then. Someone would have to fly directly into the heart of the swarm fleet through concentrated fire and detonate the device manually. "I'll do it," said Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park. She stepped forward from where she'd been standing by the wall. "I've logged more combat flight hours than anyone else in the fleet. If anyone can make that run, it's me." "Lisa." "You don't have to volunteer," Cross said. "Yes, I do. That's what we're here for, isn't it? To protect people who can't protect themselves. Those 12 billion civilians down there, they didn't ask for this war, but we can end it for them." Cross wanted to argue, wanted to find another way. But she'd been a military officer too long to lie to herself. Sometimes the only path to victory required sacrifice. "Approved. You'll fly a modified fighter, stripped down for speed and loaded with the EMP device. The fleet will create an opening for you." The briefing continued, finalizing tactics and fallback positions. But everyone's mind was on Park, who would either save billions or die trying. "Probably both." The swarm fleet arrived exactly on schedule, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in a massive formation that blotted out the stars. 300 crystalline ships, each one reflecting the light of Harmony Prime's sun. They were beautiful and terrible, like a snowstorm that promised death. Admiral Cross broadcast on all frequencies, including the swarm's electromagnetic spectrum. The message was simple: images of Earth's deadliest predators, followed by a human handprint. The meaning was unmistakable. "This world is protected. Turn back or face extinction." The swarm's response was to advance. "All ships weapons free. Show them what humanity brings to war." The battle began with a devastating barrage from human railguns. Kinetic rounds crossed the distance at relativistic speeds, each impact releasing energy equivalent to small nuclear weapons. The swarm's front line shattered, 20 ships destroyed in the opening volley. But they kept coming. The swarm had learned. They dispersed their formation, making themselves harder targets. They deployed smaller attack craft in swarms, overwhelming human point defenses through sheer numbers. They concentrated fire on isolated vessels, trying to create gaps in the defensive line. The human fleet responded with practiced precision. Ships rotated positions, damaged vessels falling back while fresh ones moved forward. Crew rotations allowed constant weapons fire while maintenance teams worked frantically to repair battle damage. "This is what we were built for," Captain Foster said from the Swift Justice. Her ship dove through a cluster of swarm fighters, point defense lasers tracking targets faster than organic eyes could follow. Every drill, every simulation, every year of preparation, it all comes down to right now. The battle raged for 6 hours. Human casualties mounted. The carrier New Delhi took critical damage when 3 swarm ships concentrated fire on her port side. Captain Raj Kumar ordered evacuation of the damaged sections, but a dozen swarm boarding drones breached the hull before SEALs could deploy. Kumar and his security teams fought the drones through the carrier's corridors. Close-quarters combat in cramped spaces, exactly the kind of brutal fighting humans had perfected in Earth's urban centers. The drones were efficient and fearless. The humans were angry and determined. "Fall back to Section 7, Kumar ordered. "Seal the bulkheads behind us. We're going to trap them and vent the sections." It was a desperate strategy. By venting atmosphere, they'd kill the drones but also lose critical ship systems. The New Delhi would be crippled, barely able to limp away from battle. But they'd survive. The trapped drones were expelled into space, and the New Delhi retreated to the reserve line, her crew already working on emergency repairs. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Park prepared for her run. She sat in the cockpit of her modified fighter, the EMP device taking up most of the cargo space. The fighter had been stripped of everything non-essential. No life support beyond her suit. No weapons except the bombs she was delivering. Just engines, thrusters, and her skill. "All squadrons create an opening," Admiral Cross ordered. "Park, you have 30 seconds. Make them count." 20 human fighters dove toward the swarm command ship, firing everything they had. Missiles, railgun rounds, even their point defense lasers turned outward. They created a corridor of destruction, a momentary gap in the swarm's defenses. Park punched her engines to maximum burn. The acceleration crushed her back into the seat, forces that would have killed a coalition species. Her vision narrowed, blood forced away from her brain by the brutal G-forces. But she'd trained for this. Her enhanced physiology, product of Earth's high gravity, handled the stress. She threaded through enemy fire, her fighter weaving and jinking with moves no sane pilot would attempt. 500 meters, 400, 300. Swarm defensive fire concentrated on her. Plasma cutters scorched her shields. Kinetic rounds punched through her fighter's hull. Warning alarms screamed their last alerts before the systems failed entirely. 200 meters. Park armed the EMP device. The fighter was dying around her, controls failing, life support gone. She had maybe 10 seconds before the whole thing came apart. 100 meters. "For Earth," she transmitted, "for all of us." She ejected, her seat firing her away from the doomed fighter even as the EMP device detonated. The blast was invisible but devastating, electromagnetic energy washing over the swarm command ship at intensities that scrambled every circuit, disrupted every biological processor, and severed the connection between the hive mind and its component units. Across the battle space, 300 swarm ships suddenly stopped coordinating. They fought on, but independently, their tactical efficiency plummeting exactly as Dr. Volkov had predicted. "All ships press the attack," Cross ordered. "Target their confusion. Don't give them time to adapt." The human fleet, supported by hastily armed coalition vessels, tore into the disorganized swarm. Without central coordination, the crystalline ships couldn't support each other, couldn't predict human tactics, couldn't adjust their strategies. The battle lasted another 4 hours, but the outcome was decided the moment Park's device detonated. One by one, the swarm ships were destroyed or driven into retreat. When silence finally fell, Admiral Cross pulled up the casualty reports. 23 human ships damaged beyond immediate repair. 4 destroyed completely. 847 humans dead. 134 coalition casualties from the ships they'd armed and brought into the fight. And 12 billion civilians safe. Recovery teams found Park's ejection pod 3 hours later, drifting in the debris field. She was alive, barely conscious, suffering from radiation exposure and decompression injuries, but alive. "Did we win?" she asked as medics loaded her onto the rescue shuttle. "We won," they told her. "You saved them all." 3 months after the Battle of Harmony Prime, Ambassador Tilra stood in the Grand Assembly Hall and watched history being made. 47 coalition species had gathered, along with representatives from Earth. The hall had been constructed thousands of years ago, designed to accommodate the varied biologies of member species. Today, it was modified to include a section with Earth-standard gravity, separated by a transparent barrier. Admiral Cross stood in that section, along with Commander Tanaka, Dr. Volkov, Captain Foster, and a dozen other human representatives. They looked uncomfortable in their formal uniforms, more used to the practical clothing of warships than ceremonial dress. The Harmonious Coalition recognizes the contributions of the human species, Council Leader Vorn announced. His translation carried through the hall's advanced acoustic systems. You answered our call when extinction threatened. You fought for strangers. You bled for people you had never met. Such actions define the highest ideals of our civilization. Tilra watched Cross's face. The Admiral showed no reaction, maintaining professional composure. But Tilra had learned to read human expressions over the months. She saw the pride, carefully controlled. The grief for those who hadn't survived. The uncertainty, wondering if Earth's sacrifice had been worth it. We offer humanity full membership in the coalition, Vorn continued. Access to our scientific knowledge, our trade networks, our friendship. We offer you a place among the stars as equals. The hall erupted in a complex symphony of approval. Whistles, chirps, harmonic vibrations, and other sounds that human ears couldn't quite process. Not all the member species were comfortable with this decision, Tilra knew. Some still feared the Deathworlders, but the vote had been unanimous. Fear took second place to gratitude. Admiral Cross stepped forward to the barrier. On behalf of the United Earth Government, we accept, but I want to make something clear. We didn't come here expecting rewards. We came because it was right, because you called for help and we could provide it. That's what neighbors do. Then let us be neighbors, Vorn replied, and friends. The ceremony continued for another hour, formalizing agreements and establishing diplomatic protocols. Tilra barely paid attention. She was watching the human delegation interact with coalition representatives, seeing the awkward but genuine attempts at connection. Bobby Wilson stood with Piera, the young technician who discovered Earth's coordinates. They'd become friends during the conflict, bonding over technical discussions and shared trauma. Now Bobby was explaining something about human music, making exaggerated gestures that made Piera's skin shift through several colors in amusement. He's staying, Tilra said to Cross during a break in the proceedings. Bobby requested assignment to Meridian VII's reconstruction effort. I know. Several others have asked for similar postings. Seems some of my people want to help rebuild what the swarm destroyed. You're giving them permission. Why wouldn't I? This isn't an occupation. It's a partnership. If humans can help coalition worlds recover, that strengthens both our civilizations. Tilra hesitated, then asked the question that had been bothering her for weeks. Why did you really come? You could have ignored our message. Earth could have remained isolated, safe from galactic conflicts. Why risk your people for strangers? Cross was quiet for a moment, looking out at the assembled species. 200 years ago, humanity sent messages into space. We put recordings on probes, built radio telescopes, scanned every frequency we could think of. We were desperate to find out if we were alone. The silence almost broke us. Some people gave up hope entirely. She turned to face Tilra directly. Then your message arrived, proof that we weren't alone, proof that other intelligent species existed, but more than that, proof that someone thought we were worth calling. Worth trusting with something as precious as survival. How could we not answer? Even knowing you might die. Especially knowing that. What good is existing if you won't fight for something bigger than yourself? The formal ceremony concluded, but the real work was just beginning. Human engineers deployed across coalition space, sharing technology and learning from species with thousands of years more advancement. The exchange went both ways. Humans might not match Coalition theoretical physics, but their practical engineering and materials science filled gaps the Coalition didn't know they had. Dr. Volkov established a xenobiology research station in orbit around Harmony Prime. Coalition scientists joined her team, fascinated by Earth's brutal evolutionary history and what it had produced. They studied human endurance, adaptability, and psychological resilience like scholars examining ancient texts. "Your people are remarkable," one scientist told Volkov. "We've modeled hundreds of evolutionary scenarios. None of them suggested intelligence could emerge from such hostile conditions." "Life finds a way," Volkov replied, "and intelligence is just life's way of finding better solutions." The military integration took longer. Coalition species struggled with human combat doctrine. The aggressive maneuvers, the acceptance of casualties, the willingness to engage in close-quarters fighting. It all seemed insane to beings evolved in peaceful environments. But they learned. Slowly, carefully, Coalition defense forces began incorporating human tactics into their training, not to become warriors themselves, but to understand how to coordinate with Earth's forces if another threat emerged. Because everyone knew the swarm wasn't the only danger in the galaxy. 6 months after first contact, Tilra visited Earth. The shuttle descent terrified her. Earth's atmosphere was thick, turbulent, violent. The gravity kept increasing as they approached the surface, until Tilra felt like she was being crushed. They'd given her an enhanced support suit, but it barely helped. When she finally stood on Earth's surface, in a specially prepared low-gravity dome in Beijing, she understood why humans were the way they were. "This is hell," she said, watching through the dome's windows as a thunderstorm rolled across the landscape. Lightning split the sky. Rain fell in sheets. Wind bent trees almost horizontal. "This is Wednesday," replied Dr. Okonkwo, who'd been assigned as Tilra's guide. "Wait until you see a real storm." They toured Earth cities, always within protected environments that kept Tilra from being crushed. She saw the remnants of ancient warfare, monuments to conflicts that had killed millions. She saw art created in response to tragedy, music born from pain, literature exploring the depths of human suffering and triumph. "Your history is written in blood," she observed. "Yes, but also in hope. Every war taught us the cost of conflict. Every tragedy showed us the value of compassion. We're not peaceful because evolution made us that way. We're peaceful because we chose to be, knowing full well how to be otherwise." Tilra met with Earth leaders, establishing formal diplomatic relations. She visited schools where human children learned about Coalition species. She saw the genuine excitement humans felt about joining the galactic community. But she also saw the military preparations continuing. Earth wasn't going to be caught unprepared again. 1 year after the Battle of Harmony Prime, the first joint Coalition human exploration ship launched. Named the Answered Call, it carried a mixed crew of 20 species, including 12 humans. Their mission was to explore beyond Coalition space, seeking new civilizations and potential threats. Tilra and Admiral Cross watched the launch together from Luna Station. "Do you think we'll find more hostiles?" Tilra asked. "Probably. The galaxy is a big place, but now you have allies who know how to fight. And friends who taught us that strength isn't just about weapons. It's about being willing to stand for others." Cross smiled. "You're learning. Maybe in a few thousand years the Coalition will be as stubborn as humans." "I sincerely hope not. One Deathworld species in the galaxy is quite enough." They watched the ship disappear into the stars, carrying hope and determination into the unknown. Behind them, Earth and the Coalition worlds continued their integration. Cultures mixing, technologies blending, friendships forming across species lines. The harmonious Coalition had sent a desperate SOS into the void, calling the death system without knowing what would answer. Earth had responded with fury and sacrifice, bringing the galaxy's nightmares to fight on the side of peace. And in doing so, both civilizations discovered something neither had truly believed possible. They weren't alone anymore. They never would be again. In the reconstructed orbital station above Meridian VII, Bobby Wilson taught coalition engineers how to reinforce structures for higher stress loads. Piera worked alongside him, her understanding of coalition physics complementing his practical experience. "You know," Bobby said during a break, "when I signed up for the military, I thought I'd spend my career defending Earth from aliens. Never imagined I'd be rebuilding their worlds instead." "Are you disappointed?" Piera asked. "Hell no, this is better. Fighting is necessary sometimes, but building is what we're really good at. Humans spent thousands of years destroying each other. We're still learning how to create." "Then learn with us. We've been creating for a long time. Perhaps together we'll build something that lasts." Bobby looked out at the planet below, where terraforming crews were beginning the long process of restoring what the swarm had destroyed. Human and coalition workers, side by side, turning a dead world back into a garden. "Yeah," he said, "I think we will." Far above, in the darkness between stars, the answered call sailed toward the unknown. Its crew was ready for whatever they might find, ready to fight if necessary, ready to help if possible, ready to answer any call that came from the void. Because that's what friends did. That's what family did, and humanity had finally found both among the stars.